All right, I have a couple of more problems. They're already worked out, so I want to walk you through these. They're very similar, but they're different enough that you're going to get two different answers. So if we take a look at these two problems, one problem says find the domain of this, and it gives us this expression, and then we have find the domain of this. And notice the difference here. Here, the fraction is inside the roots, and then here on this one, the roots are inside the fraction. And so how does that affect the answer? Well, it affects the answer because of order of operations. In the first one, the division is going to happen first, and then we take the root. So we're only looking where the entire fraction is negative. And remember, you could have negative on the top and a negative on the bottom that cancels out, makes the whole fraction positive, and there's no issue with the radical. Whereas down here on this one, if the numerator is negative, you're already outside the domain. Or if the denominator is negative, you're already outside the domain. So we have to worry about those separately. So let's take a look at how we do these. So the first one, again, we have a radical. So whatever is inside the radical has to be greater than or equal to 0. So this ends up being the inequality that we want to solve. Whatever is inside the radical, the radicand can't be negative. And then we solve it like we've been doing the other problems. So if we take a look, this denominator can factor into those two factors. It gives us our critical numbers of x equals -2 and plus or minus 5. List the factors off to the left. We put our critical numbers on the number line. Just like the previous example, we do have something in the denominator, so those numbers can never be 0. So that's why I'm not shading in the 5 and the -5. But because I do want to know where this entire fraction could be equal to 0, I do want to look at where the numerator is 0. And that's why I will shade the 2. I do worry about that one. So we go ahead and solve it just like before, and we get this interval right here at the bottom. So that's this first example. Now look at the difference, and I'm going to leave these on the screen. I'll scroll down in a second. But when the radical is separated, so when the radicals are inside the fraction, now we have to look at each one individually. So we want to look at when the numerator is non-negative and when the denominator is also non-negative, but also it can't be equal to 0. So I can have the numerator equal to 0. I can't have the denominator equal to 0. So I have to look at both of these. So it's like two separate problems. Now I could do the whole sign chart thing, but these are much easier to solve by themselves. So I solve this this inequality by itself and this inequality by itself, and I wind up with these two things. I want to know when x is greater than or equal to -2 and when x is greater than 5 or less than -5. So I need to look at these two things separately. But I want to know what values of x will make both of them true. And so now I've gone ahead and set up a number line so it makes it a little easier. I've done some scratch work kind of above the number line. So this inequality that I shaded in green, I went ahead and put up here in green. So this is where all the numbers are greater than or equal to -2. And then this part that I highlighted in blue, that's these two shaded intervals. But again, it's just above the number line. It's kind of my scratch work. So x is less than -5 or x is greater than +5. So now for my final answer, I want to know what values of x make both the green and the blue true. And so the only part that gets both of them is this interval right here. That's where both the green and the blue are shaded. And then also 5 is not in the blue interval, so that's why 5 is an open circle. So I wind up with this as my domain. X is greater than 5. If I can pull this down just a little bit, right here was my answer for the previous one. So here's the x is greater than 5 interval, but I also was right here. These values of x, anything between -5 and -2, they'll actually make both the numerator and denominator negative. And that's okay then, because a negative divided by a negative is positive, and that's why it can be part of this domain. So anyway, the bottom line for this is just be careful. You have to think of an order of operations. So here the fraction was inside the radical, so we could just worry about, we have one radicand, so only one radicand to worry about. That one radicand is non-negative. In this one, now we have two radicands, so we have to look at both radicands and when they're non-negative. And that is it. That ends our notes for today. All right, see you next time. Bye.